There is something inside of you, something silent, yet incredibly powerful. You cannot see it, yet it influences everything you do. It does not announce itself with arrogance or pride, nor does it seek the spotlight. Instead, it moves undetected, weaving itself into the fabric of your thoughts, emotions, and actions, controlling your life without you ever realizing it. It whispers in your ear, shaping your every decision, filtering the way you see the world, dictating what you strive for and what you fear. It is the unseen force behind your insecurities, your hesitations, your endless need to prove yourself. It disguises itself so well that you don't even question it. You simply accept it as reality. This is the hidden ego, the silent architect of your identity, the invisible ruler of your mind. Unlike the loud and obvious ego, which craves attention and superiority, this one is far more deceptive. It does not push itself forward aggressively. Instead, it guides you subtly, nudging you toward fear, self-doubt, and attachment to an identity you never consciously chose. It does not shout, it whispers. It does not demand, it convinces. It does not stand apart from you, it becomes you. And before you even realize it, the hidden ego begins to ruin your life. It keeps you trapped in relationships that no longer serve you, making you afraid to walk away because it whispers, "What if you never find someone else?" It makes you chase success, not because it brings fulfillment, but because it tells you, you are nothing without achievement. It forces you to compare yourself to others, planting the thought, you should be further ahead by now, making you feel like you are always falling behind. It convinces you to fear failure so deeply that you never take the risks that could truly change your life. And worst of all, it makes you believe that you are in control, when in reality, it is the one pulling the strings. This hidden ego is why you constantly feel like you are not enough. It is the reason why you measure your worth by how much you achieve, how others perceive you, and whether or not you meet expectations that were never truly yours to begin with. It traps you in an endless cycle of seeking, comparing, and striving, all while convincing you that this is just how life is. But what if I told you something that could change everything? What if I told you that the voice in your head is not your own? That the thoughts that shape your perception of reality, your ambitions, your fears, your desires, none of them are truly yours? That everything you believe about yourself might just be a carefully constructed illusion? That the ego, the very thing you have trusted to guide your decisions, is the very thing standing between you and true freedom? And that beyond this illusion, there is something far greater waiting for you? Would you dare to take a step beyond the ego's grip? Or will you continue living under the rule of a silent master you do not even realize is there? To understand the nature of the hidden ego, we must go back to an ancient story that has been passed down for centuries, carrying a truth so deep that most people overlook it. It is the story of Narcissus, a young man who, one day, comes across a still pond. As he gazes into the water, he sees something he has never seen before, his own reflection. At first, he is mesmerized, captivated by the image staring back at him. What begins as simple curiosity soon turns into something far more dangerous. He returns to the water again and again, unable to look away, unable to move on. Slowly, everything else begins to fade. The trees, the sky, the wind brushing against his skin, none of it matters anymore. All that remains is the reflection. And then, without realizing it, he loses himself completely. His entire existence collapses into an image that was never real to begin with. Some interpret this as a simple tale about vanity, a warning against excessive self-admiration. But this story is not just about Narcissus, it is about all of us, because we too are staring into a reflection, not in water, but in the mirror of the mind. From the moment we are born, we begin constructing an identity, a version of ourselves built from our experiences, the expectations of others, and the roles we are given by society. We become students, professionals, parents, leaders, artists, seekers, and slowly we attach to these identities, believing that they define who we are. But these identities are nothing more than mental reflections, temporary, fragile, and constantly shifting. Just like Narcissus, we become obsessed with these reflections, constantly checking, maintaining, and protecting them, afraid of what might happen if they crack. If our success fades, who are we without it? If our beauty changes, will we still be valuable? If people stop admiring us, do we still matter? These questions haunt us, not because they are real, but because the hidden ego depends on them to survive. It convinces us that our worth is tied to the reflection we have created, and so we cling to the illusion, seeking validation, chasing approval, terrified of anything that threatens our carefully constructed self-image. The tragedy of Narcissus was not that he loved himself too much, it was that he only knew himself through the reflection. He had no sense of who he was beyond the image in the water. And isn't that exactly what the hidden ego does to us? It makes us believe that we are the projection, not the person behind it. That we are the thoughts, the opinions, the labels, not the awareness that sees them. It keeps us chasing, striving, competing, not because we truly need more, but because it fears what will happen when we stop looking into the reflection. Because when we stop, the illusion begins to fade. And when the illusion fades, the ego loses its power. So the real question is, are you ready to look away from the water? The greatest trick the hidden ego ever played was convincing you that you are it, that the voice inside your head, the one that constantly narrates your life, judges, worries, plans, and compares, is actually you, that your identity is made up of your achievements, failures, relationships, and fears. And so, without realizing it, you spend your life chasing an image of yourself that is nothing more than a mental construct. You attach yourself to external things, titles, success, reputation, relationships, believing that they define your worth. The ego convinces you that who you are is something that must be built, earned, and perfected. This is why so many people live in a constant state of striving. They measure their worth by external validation, by how much they accomplish, how others perceive them, and whether or not they fit into an ideal version of themselves. Every decision, every effort, every ambition is fueled by the fear that without these things, they will be nothing. And yet, the fulfillment never lasts. You achieve something, and for a brief moment, you feel relief. But then, almost instantly, the mind shifts forward to the next thing, the next goal, the next validation, the next way to prove yourself. You find yourself trapped in an endless cycle of seeking, always feeling like happiness is just one step away. But have you ever stopped to ask yourself, who is the one chasing? Who is the one beneath all these labels, beyond all these roles? Because the truth is, the person you believe yourself to be is just a collection of thoughts, an illusion carefully constructed by the hidden ego. Imagine a sculptor working tirelessly on a statue, shaping it to perfection. Every detail, every curve, every expression must be just right. But one day, the sculptor forgets that they are the creator. They become so obsessed with the statue that they start to believe they are it. They do not see that they are separate from what they have built. This is exactly what happens with the ego. From childhood, we are given names, roles, expectations, and beliefs. We build an identity based on our experiences and the way others see us. Over time, this constructed self becomes so deeply ingrained that we mistake it for who we truly are. We do not see that we are the sculptor, the awareness behind the mask. Instead, we believe we are the mask. And this is where the suffering begins, because once you believe you are the mask, you must protect it at all costs. You become afraid of failure because it threatens your identity as a successful person. You avoid criticism because it challenges the image of yourself that you've built. You seek approval because without it, you feel like you are disappearing. And so your life becomes a performance, an exhausting effort to maintain the illusion of self. But deep down, there is always a lingering fear. What if I am not who I think I am? What happens if this identity I've built begins to crumble? The hidden ego thrives on lack. It convinces you that you are not enough as you are, that you need to achieve more, improve more, become more. It keeps you chasing after success, status, and validation, making you believe that happiness is always just out of reach. And so, you run. You push yourself harder, thinking, once I reach this goal, I'll finally be at peace. But the moment you arrive, the satisfaction fades. Almost immediately, the mind shifts to the next thing, the next promotion, the next achievement, the next way to prove yourself, because the ego cannot afford for you to stop searching. If you ever stopped, if you ever truly became still, the illusion would begin to dissolve. You would start to see that the self you have been chasing never existed in the first place. And that is the ego's greatest fear. The hidden ego does not seek truth, it seeks survival. And to survive, it needs to be seen, recognized, and validated. This is why so many people live their lives seeking external approval. They attach their identity to things that can be measured: how successful they are, how attractive they are, how many people admire them. But the problem with building your self-worth on external factors is this: everything outside of you can be taken away. If you believe you are your career, what happens when you lose your job? If you believe you are your reputation, what happens when someone disapproves of you? If you believe you are your beauty, what happens when you age? The moment the things you identified with begin to fade, the illusion of self collapses, and with it, your sense of worth. This is why people experience identity crises, because the things they thought made them somebody disappear, leaving them with a terrifying question: who am I without all of this? The truth: you were never those things to begin with. But because the hidden ego kept you trapped in the illusion, you never realized it. If you truly want to be free, you must be willing to question everything you believe about yourself. You must be willing to step back from the identity you've built and ask, who am I beyond my achievements? Who am I beyond my failures? Who am I when no one is watching? The hidden ego will resist this. It will try to pull you back into the illusion, to convince you that without your labels and identities, you are nothing. But the opposite is true. You are not your thoughts. You are not your past. You are not the image you see in the mirror. You are the awareness behind it all. And the moment you stop identifying with the illusion of self, something incredible happens. The endless striving stops. The need for validation disappears. And for the first time, you experience real peace. Not the kind that comes and goes with achievements, but the kind that has always been inside you, because the person you truly are was never lost, only forgotten. The way to free yourself from the hidden ego is not through force, resistance, or suppression. You cannot destroy the ego by fighting it, because the very act of struggle feeds it. The ego thrives on opposition, on the belief that there is always something to fix, something to prove, something to become. Instead, true freedom comes from seeing through the illusion. Imagine standing in a dark room, mistaking a rope for a snake. You panic. You react, you search for ways to protect yourself, but the moment you shine a light on it, you see the truth. It was never a snake to begin with. The fear, the struggle, the urgency, none of it was necessary. This is how the ego works. It convinces you that it is real, that it is you, and so you obey it without question. You protect it, feed it, and identify with it. But once you begin to see it for what it truly is, an illusion, a conditioned pattern of the mind, it loses its power. So how do you begin to wake up from this illusion? You start by watching. The ego survives in unconsciousness. It operates best when you are distracted, when you are caught in thought, lost in comparison, seeking validation, or replaying the past. But the moment you step back and observe the way it functions, something shifts. Instead of reacting to your thoughts, you watch them. Instead of believing every fear, you question it. Instead of chasing approval, you notice the impulse without obeying it. This is the beginning of awareness. But awareness alone is not enough. To truly break free, you must also let go of the attachments that keep you bound to the ego's illusion. The ego feeds on external validation, on approval, recognition, status, and identity. It constantly asks, am I enough? And seeks reassurance from the world. It creates a fragile self-worth that is built on how others perceive you. But what happens when you stop seeking validation? When you no longer care about how others see you? The ego panics, because without external reinforcement, it begins to dissolve. And this is where true freedom begins. To escape the trap of the hidden ego, you must also learn to let go of the false identities you have constructed. If you believe you are your career, what happens when it's taken away? If you believe you are your relationships, who are you when people leave? If you believe you are your achievements, what happens when you fail? As long as you attach your identity to things that can be lost, you will always live in fear. Fear of failure, fear of rejection, fear of not being enough. But when you recognize that you are something deeper than all of these things, the fear begins to fade. Because the truth is, your real self is not something that can be measured, praised, or compared. It is not your name, your role, or the image you present to the world. It is the awareness behind it all, the presence that remains unchanged, no matter what happens in your life. And when you begin to live from this place, the ego loses its grip. You no longer chase happiness. You experience it in the present. You no longer fear the future. You trust the unfolding of life. You no longer seek approval. You rest in the certainty of your own being. This is what it means to escape the trap of the hidden ego. Not by fighting it, not by trying to get rid of it, but by seeing through it, stepping beyond its illusions, and waking up to who you truly are. For so long, you have stared into the reflection, believing it was you. You have built your life around an image, a carefully constructed identity, a set of stories about who you are and who you must be, and without realizing it, you have become trapped within it. You have spent years chasing approval, striving for success, seeking to prove yourself, never stopping to ask, who am I beyond all of this? But now something shifts. You begin to see the truth. You are not the image in the water. You are not the thoughts in your mind. You are not your achievements, your reputation, or the labels you wear. You are the awareness that sees it all. And the moment you realize this, the hidden ego loses its power. Imagine a bird that has spent its entire life in a cage. For years, it has lived within the bars, believing that this small, confined space is all there is. It longs to be free, but it cannot even comprehend what freedom looks like, because it has never known anything else. Then, one day, something extraordinary happens. The door of the cage swings open. For the first time, the bird sees the sky, the endless possibilities, the vastness beyond its tiny world. But here's the surprising part. It does not immediately fly out. Instead, it hesitates. It has lived in the cage for so long that the idea of stepping beyond it feels terrifying. It has grown comfortable in its limitations, safe in its smallness. And so, it faces a choice. Does it stay within the illusion of safety, within the familiar world it has always known? Or does it take the leap, despite the fear, despite the uncertainty, into something far greater than it ever imagined? This is where you stand right now. This is not just a theory. This is your life. You have a choice. You can continue living as a prisoner of the hidden ego, bound by your fears, your insecurities, your attachment to an identity that was never real. Or you can wake up. You can step beyond the illusion, beyond the stories, beyond the false sense of self that has kept you small. And when you do, when you finally take that step, you will realize something profound. You were never trapped to begin with. The cage was an illusion. The door was always open. And the freedom you have been seeking, it was inside you all along.